So this latest Google fine is your third, as I noted, but it's smaller and sort of less onerous than some of the other punishments. Why?
Well, the Google behavior in this case stopped back 2016, but it had been going on for 10 years, and it had been cutting out competitors when it comes to sort of placement of ads in third-party websites. So it's quite a serious offense. With the fine and the stop of this behavior, of course, we hope that the market will open up for competitors.
Is this your final Google fine?
Well, as you know, we still get complaints about Google behavior in local search, in jobs, and of course we take complaints serious. Some from European companies, some from US-based companies. So that it cannot be excluded that there will be a fourth Google case, but that still remains to be seen.
You know, some of the criticism when this news hit, you know, the stock barely moved. It's a drop in the bucket for companies as big and as powerful for Google, and that it's just becoming the cost of doing business for them. How do you respond to that?
Well, of course, the fine is a punishment for illegal behavior. What's important is, of course, the change of behavior for the future. We do see some change when it comes to Google Shopping and the Android decision. With Android, now Google have said that they will make a choice screen available for users to be able to directly choose another browser, another search engine if that's their choice. In the shopping comparison areas, we see that there's a big improvement in the visibility of rivals to Google and also of clicks going through from users actually to merchants. So in those two markets, you see the improvements. And of course, it remains to be seen if we will have sort of a full open competition.
I mean, you focused so closely on Google through your tenure, and you know it better than so many other companies. At this point, would you characterize Google as a monopoly?
Well, in Europe, we call it a dominant position, and they are indeed dominant in European markets. They hold market shares in search in 95, 98%. So yes, they are indeed mastering this marketplace.
Sundar Pichai, as Elon just referenced, did meet with President Trump yesterday. Have you met with him at all?
No, I haven't.
Are you worried that some of these fines, and they keep coming, are really going to make what has been a pretty tense relationship between Europe and the U.S. on trade even worse?
Well, I think that, you know, there's a lot of back and forth on trade, but I still find that there is a very deep mutual respect of the fact that we have to sort of police our own jurisdictions. Because this is really not about a company being based in the US, in Russia, anywhere else in the world. It's about doing business in Europe. And we have a European rule book that obliges you to compete on the merits, the prices, the quality, the choice that you can offer. This is what it's about. It's about consumer choice.
Speaking of consumer choice, wanted to ask about another topic. Spotify filed a complaint with you and your department that Apple is hurting consumer choice and stifling innovation in its App Store. Have you looked at the complaint? Does it seem legitimate to you?
Well, we have received a complaint, and as we always do with complaints, we start looking to see if it has merits. It's still very, very early days, but of course we're in the process of start asking questions and getting the data on our working table.
Does it seem right that Apple would take a 30% cut from subscription services like Spotify, even though they have led to tremendous growth of businesses like Spotify and downloads?
Well, the complaint is about the sort of the way that the App Store works, what you have to pay to be paying via the App Store, the communication between the services and their customers. We will assess it, of course, as we always do, to see if it merits a formal investigation.
How much is Apple on your radar these days? I mean, you had that multi-billion-dollar fine in back taxes, which I know is still going through the courts, and Apple is appealing. But as far as some of the biggest offenders, is it more the data companies right now, like a Google or Facebook, or is Apple still front and center? Well,
you know, we deal with the issues that comes up, and this is not about one company or the totality of a company. This is about illegal behavior in one area of this company, because I think, for better and for worse, these are amazing companies with great innovative potential. The important thing, of course, is that illegal behavior doesn't take place. Because just as much as there is a great promise and a lot of things that can be triggered with new technology, just as much do we need to get in control of the dark side of technology.
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, you did recently say data accumulation in the hands of a single firm may raise competition concerns. Where does that lead you? Because there are all sorts of concerns right now about how much data some of these big tech companies have and what they're doing with it.
Well, understandably, because the question of data is what will sort of make or break in the marketplace. If you want to develop new services, if you want to develop artificial intelligence, if you want to enter into a marketplace, well, your access to data will be the thing that can trigger exactly this. And when you see giant companies possessing giant amounts of data, of course, it is of concern and consideration, well, how to make sure that this will not just entrench a monopoly situation, but that we actually can allow for competition. In particular, taking into consideration that it's you and I and every other user who basically owns this data. It's our data that they're holding.
Are you specifically talking about Facebook?
No, not in particular. For us, it's a horizontal question because we see now that everything digitalizes. Also, things that you may not think about, like farming. The data coming from quality of soil, weather, treatment processes of pesticides, all of that. You see that going sort of the data road. You see health going that direction. You see transport and mobility going that direction. So everything digitalizes, and this is why data becomes centerpiece of our attention.
You know, the techlash is real in this country as well. Presidential hopeful Elizabeth Warren has actually called for breaking up some of these big technology companies to deal with some of these issues. Is that an idea that you're on board with?
Well, for us, breaking up a company would be a measure of very, very last resort, because it is, of course, quite a step to take a private company and say you have to split up, you have to divest part of this company for it to be established independently. So, of course, we're pushing with the tools that we have that are sort of mainstream to make sure that we get a legal behavior, and then, of course, pushing for change where we see that change is needed. I think that the nature of network effects, of scale economies in this line of business makes it more important to deal with access to data, data sharing, than the exact structure of these companies, because you can get a dominant position even with a quite small market share because of network effects when you get started.
So you're not in the breakup camp?
Well, of course, you have it as a thing sort of outside of the corner of your eye, but as said, for us, it's a very, very last resort measure to turn to.
What about Amazon? I know you've been sort of looking into probing whether Amazon is anti-competitive with its marketplace platform when it comes to smaller shops. How advanced are you in that investigation?
Well, we send out quite a large number of questionnaires. We get a lot of data back, and it is indeed great that also small companies, they take the time to work with us, to give us their data, because everything we do with the participants in the marketplace. So we're in the process of analyzing the data that we got to see if the data from the smaller companies, if they are used to enable and better the service for the smaller guys, or they are used in an unfair way by Amazon actually to compete against the businesses that they themselves are hosting.
Wanted to talk specifically about you and what's next. You've got 6 months left in the job, and I think you've thrown your hat in the ring for President of the EU to take over from Jean-Claude Juncker. What are your chances at this point?
Oh, you know, when that cabal has to be laid, a lot of things will have to be taken into consideration. I think we're now in a debate where who's who in Brussels is not the important thing, but the direction of our European democracy, where we want to go on climate change, on border control, on creating jobs. You know, the essentials that really concern you in your everyday life much more than who's head of the Commission.
Some people think that your blocking of the deal between Siemens and Alstom actually hurts your chances. It would have created a French-German giant, industrial giant, to go up against the likes of China and the U.S., and that's going to take away key support from the two most important countries. What do you say to that?
Well, the thing is that you have to do your job. I think it would be, you know, devastating if you took political considerations into how you would deal with a merger assessment. And if you fear that in part of the markets, there will be no one else to turn to. If you're a customer to very high-speed trains or mainline signaling system, well, you have to figure out, well, how to do this in the right way to make sure that customers still have the choice, because these are very important markets. We really need more very high-speed trains in order to compete with air travel. We need a mainline signaling system that will allow for much more regularity, cross-border traffic, you know, the basics of having a very well-working rail system. And this was the background that the businesses couldn't solve our competition concerns, and then we have no other choice but to block it.
Finally, everyone I talk to, and I say, I'm going to talk to Margrethe Vestager, she's got a new fine on Google. They say she hates America. Is that true?
Oh, on the contrary. I'm from Denmark. I think Denmark would be the country that would have sort of one of the closest relationships to the U.S. I've been traveling U.S. for decades, following not only politics but also culture in this country. So no, I have a job to make sure that European consumers, they're in charge and that the market serves the consumers. This is what I do, and then of course I very much enjoy the relationship with the US in all dimensions.